Hi class, so this week we're going to talk about creating the illusion of three dimensions in a two-dimensional object. So there's a number of tricks we use. The first one that we're going to talk about is overlapping objects and diminishing size. So here's an example of objects overlapping, as this is too. These are both examples of objects overlapping, which creates a shallow sense of space. Then we also have things getting smaller, diminishing size, and that also creates the illusion of depth. And here are some examples of that. Okay, pretty straightforward. Another tool we have is blur versus sharp focus. So something that's blurry appears to look further away, something that's in sharp focus or detailed appears to be closer. Okay? Changing direction in an object is another way of creating the illusion of depth. So diagonals, like you see here, here, and that kind of plays into perspective, which we're going to be looking at in a moment. So there's 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, and 3-point perspective. I'm going to let you guys play this video, which will go through some very great analysis. Always take advantage of these videos. There's been a lot of thought given to them, and they're very helpful. So 1-point perspective means there's one vanishing point, okay? So you have a horizon line, a vanishing point, and then everything recedes to that point. These lines that recede to that point are called orthogonals. Alright, so here's some examples of 1-point perspective. So let's say it looks like the vanishing point is going to be right here. So the horizon line is along here. It's not as obvious as it was in the example above. And then everything recedes to that point. Okay, so that's a great example. And let's see. Okay, so I was looking for some tools to draw some lines on here for you, but I couldn't find it. I'm using a new video program and I haven't quite figured that out yet. But you can see these orthogonals. The rows in the crops here are a really good example of that. Okay? So 2-point perspective is something that has two vanishing points. So there's one there and one there. It's really just two 1-point perspective images because all the orthogonals on this side are going to that vanishing point. However, all the ones on this side are going to be going to that vanishing point. So it really isn't like the other one. I'm sorry. So that's an example of 2-point perspective. So when we get into 3-point perspective, as you'll see in a minute, we're just going to be adding another vanishing point either above or below the image. Okay, so in this picture, we can't see exactly where the vanishing points are. They're going to be off the picture, somewhere in the distance, and all these things are going to be receding to them. All right, these ones in particular on the bench. This up here is actually 1-point perspective. All right, this table is 2-point perspective, the pool table. And on this one, there's some vanishing point way off in the distance, probably about right here. And there's another one about right here. And then these lines would recede to that, and these lines would recede to that. Okay, let's look at 3-point perspective. So in this example, the vanishing point is on the bottom, which makes it appear as if we're above the object. So here's two examples of that. So the vanishing point for this would be way down here. And these lines would just come straight down. Okay? And shading and texturing. So shading and texturing is another way to create the illusion of volume. So volume is different than depth. Volume makes an object look three-dimensional. It doesn't necessarily create any more space than that object would inhabit. Okay? So there's always a light source, and you have to be clear on what that is. And then where the light hits will create where your shadows are going to be. Okay? So you can see there's a whole range of volume. George Seurat, the artist who did both of these drawings, was a really beautiful draftsman as well as a painter, and he used very textured paper. The term for that is toothy paper, and the more tooth a paper has, the more texture it has. And you can see that texture creates this graininess, which adds to the illusion of volume and shading. Okay? All right. And let's look at some of the elements used to create depth in web design. Actually, I'm going to let you guys do that yourself. So anyway, this is a brief discussion about what we're going to be looking at this week, and I hope it's been helpful.